Welcome to Attican Plays Railway Empire. All right, welcome everybody. This is Attican. Welcome to another Railway Empire video. As promised, we're going to do a Trainiac playthrough, the new Trainiac game level. And we're going to go to that same Midwest map and use the Trickster as we have for the others in this little series. But again, this is going to be in Trainiac mode, so that the more difficult tasks and the stations are going to get increasingly more expensive to the point of almost being ridiculous. So we're looking at our first task to see if it really is a hard set, and it looks like it. We've got to grow our company a lot, very, very fast. We've got to grow Sioux Falls quickly to a large size. We've got to connect 3 cities. We've got to get a connection, up to Fargo and over to Rock Island, which won't be a problem. And then down at the end there, the last thing to finish it all off, we have to go way over to the east to Knoxville and make Knoxville the biggest city on the map. By the way, just for those of you who aren't from the South, it's Knoxville. It is not Knoxville. Knoxville, V-U-L, Knoxville, and with the vol as kind of the accent, Knoxville. Well, I'll take that back. They're both accented. Actually, with a Southern accent, everything you say is accented because everything has multiple syllables, and you can't not have multiple syllables. You just the words just go on and on. Anyway, enough about that. So what we're going to do is use our usual what's become now kind of my standard way to play, which is that rapid expansion out to 5 cities, 4 good solid lines, then do our cattle and wheat connections to all the factories, and that gives us a strong foundation to build from. And then you start looking at your specific tasks. So our first task here is to grow our company value. So we're going to do 2 things. We're going to do what I just described, that rapid expansion, just like we've done the other times we've played this map in this series. So it's going to be kind of repetitive, and I'm going to actually fast forward through it here in just a moment. But because it is literally a repeat of what we've done before, the only difference is these stations just get more and more expensive, which slows us down a bit. But other than that, it's exactly the same. So we're going to do that rapid expansion to give us our kind of our economic footprint and our foundation, and then we're going to really try to buy industries and buy farms, mines, whatever we can buy to raise our company value, because that's one lesson I did learn during this series is the company value, of course, is calculated based on all the things that your company owns plus the cash that you're accumulating as you make profit. And one of the best ways to quickly build that value is to buy things, just to put it simply, buy industry. So we're going to get into buy industry mode here. But I'm going to fast forward this now. Maybe let's just wait and watch one more station get built so we can see how much it costs. There you can see it's up to 44,000 versus 40. So it's gone up. The second one's 42. This one's 44. They'll just keep increasing. And by the way, the expansion of the station also keeps increasing in proportion. So they get ridiculously expensive. You'll see how expensive they get toward the end. And one of our deals here is to have 40 stations. Well, you can imagine what that 40th one is going to cost. Actually, you could probably calculate it if you're good at math. So let's fast forward. We're going to do this expansion just like we've done before. Kansas City, Des Moines, Omaha, Sioux Falls, which is important in this one because we have to grow it, and Fargo. So let's fast forward all the way through the rapid expansion and through the wheat cattle phase, because it's repetitive of things we've already done. Okay, I don't know if you caught this as it was flying by, but we also went down to Fayetteville and to Memphis. Now, why did we do that? Because we had this meat industry in Fayetteville that came up as a something we could purchase, and we need to grow our company value, so we took advantage of that and grabbed that meat industry in Fayetteville. And since we had the meat industry, I wanted to run cattle down there to it. And since the Omaha to Fayetteville is really a meat to meat line, we set up that line. But then we wanted to go ahead and go out to Memphis, which has beer, so that we would have a meat beer line between Fayetteville and Memphis that would be a good profit for us. So basically, we've expanded now, instead of 5 cities, out to 7 cities, because we've added Fayetteville and Memphis. So now we're in the process of buying industry. So we're trying to buy that meat industry in Omaha, and we're successful there. And we can see that our company value is starting to grow nicely. This is a pretty good growth of company value. I'm sure there are other, perhaps even better ways to do this, but my feeling was, if I can just simply buy things, why not? I am an American after all. That's how we solve all our problems, is by buying more stuff. So now we're at that point, or we're still doing the buying deal, and we're going to, as things come along like this logging is an easy one, because we know we're going to use it. We know we're going to use it to feed the growth of Sioux Falls, for example, and other cities if we want. And so we're going to buy that. That was like a no-brainer. Buy that logging. So our company value is up in the 7 millions now. We're doing pretty well. A little disappointed I didn't grow it faster. If any of you have comments on what we could have done or I could have done to do a better job with this, please let me know. But now we're moving into our next familiar phase. We've got our 3 phases. We've got rapid expansion, we've got the wheat cattle, and now we've got the pass-through warehouse 2-city cluster. So naturally, we would build that with Sioux Falls. Sioux Falls is beer. We hook it up to a meat line, could have gone up to Fargo or down to Omaha. I decided to do the same one we keep doing, which is to Omaha. And so now we're just going to set up that pass-through warehouse. And I think I'm going to fast forward this as well. I mean, there's over 3 hours of it. If I just ran all this out, it would be like 10 30-minute videos or 5 1-hour videos or something, and it just seems like an awful lot for another playthrough on this map. So I am kind of using the fast forward technique on this one. So let's go ahead and fast forward through this build out of the warehouse. There are a couple of comments to make about it after it's done, but I'll hold those off, and we'll just kind of fast forward through the build out of the warehouse. All right, we're just kind of wrapping up that warehouse, build the warehouse phase. We're setting up our lines between the warehouses and using our little Jerome Weston technique to make sure we get the loading correct and make them efficient. So that's all going great. A few comments. One, you'll notice that kind of weird little line off that sugar that's real close to the warehouse. I built my station too close to the warehouse. I didn't have enough room to run the line out to the close side, so I had to loop it around the back. It worked out fine, kind of looks kind of cool, but it's a little silly to have them go backwards and come, go away from the station to come back to it, or the warehouse, but that's okay. And the other one is I didn't hesitate to run a big bridge and run that corn across to get it in there, as you can see there. But I wanted corn in there. It's important for growth. And I ran a pretty long line for the milk across the river to get over there. But it didn't matter. I wanted to have a good, strong warehouse with good stuff in it. And here, Midu, if you're watching, this is for you. Midu keeps watching my videos and then saying, hey, you can put maintenance on each of your stations. And yes, I'm fully aware of that. And I don't think he or she has seen the videos where I discuss the fact that you don't need to put maintenance. You can play these perfectly beautifully well without building your maintenance, because the maintenance actually can slow you down in some ways. I don't think they punish you enough for failing to put maintenance in. But I decided, since Midu is so adamant about it, and also because I actually prefer it, I would prefer having the maintenance sheds, because I can't stand all those messages and all those breakdowns, and it just seems wrong to me that you can get away with not having the maintenance. So here I am putting maintenance on all my stations. Because now I've got plenty of money. We're making money very, very quickly now, and so it was no big deal for me. We will see our economy slow down for just a moment, for about a quarter, while all these trains that haven't been maintained are getting maintenance. You'll kind of see a quarter's lag in your economy, but that's okay. After that, it picks back up and everything starts to smooth out, and the maintenance gets smoothed out over time, and everything works. And the other reason I didn't mind doing it was because I like the ball when I'm just going to run it the whole time. So here's, I played with this new functionality. They have this information stuff, and you can do these called workload, and it shows your trains in color codes. And it looks like a red train means it's fully loaded and being used a lot. Yellow means it's a little less so. And when we looked at that, we had red everywhere, which I think is good actually in this case, because it means our trains are running full and they're running efficiently, and it's a place where you could consider more trains, but I don't think it necessarily says you need them. I think the red in this case just says, hey, you're running full trains, good for you. And the route details one, I still don't have that one, the other one down yet. And we'll have to look at that some more to see how that's going to help us. If any of you have any thoughts on that, please go for it. So double checking to see how we're doing. Sioux Falls is growing great. We've got some more connections to make to get big cities. And here I decided not to put a museum in Des Moines, even though I could. And I believe my thought was at the time, I didn't want to help my opponent, but that was stupid, because I'm running lines there that are making good money. I really should have put a museum. Maybe I was thinking competition with Sioux Falls, but that's silly too, because it just grows Sioux Falls. It's not make Sioux Falls the biggest. I could have been looking down the road to that later task of Knoxville. That's possible, but there would have been ways to deal with that had I gone ahead and put it in. So I think that was a mistake. I should have put a museum in Des Moines. All right, so we've got our rapid expansion, we've got our wheat cattle phase, we've got our pass-through warehouse, we've got Omaha and Sioux Falls, particularly Sioux Falls, set up to really grow well. They cut you some slack by saying Sioux Falls, because if you've ever noticed on this map, Sioux Falls tends to grow anyway, because it's got some resources close to it by land, so it gets off to a great start growing anyway. Now here I was thinking about running wheat directly into Omaha, because we already have wheat going into Sioux Falls from up there in the north. So I took the wheat off the warehouse and thinking I'd run it directly in, and I decided also to buy this grain farm or wheat farm, whatever you want to call it, prior to setting it up. And this is just a general rule you should follow. When you have these out in the country farms, mines, quarries, what have you, and they're not making any money, and you're going to set them up and turn them into profitable businesses, for goodness sake, buy them first. And definitely buy them before you set up your routes and start turning them into profitable businesses. You want to buy them first and then set up your routes and make money off of them. And that way you get money from the farm or mine or quarry itself, plus the shipping of it. And then if you happen to own the business it's feeding, all the better. You make even more money. But at any rate, I was going to run this come down here and then branch off and go directly into Omaha with this wheat because as I said, we already have wheat up in Sioux Falls. But I look at it in a moment here. I'll look at it and say, it's too clumsy to get it in there, so I'll just turn the warehouse wheat back on and run it into the warehouse. So let's go ahead and fast forward a bit more and see what other trouble we can get into here. Okay. So here's a good place to, I'll slow it down here in just a moment. What we want to do now is connect. We had to connect, this time it is connect 3 cities, 3 large cities. Chicago's already out there, so I wanted to connect to Chicago and decided to do it through Rock Island. That way we get, of course, the meat beer to Rock Island and then the beer meat line from Rock Island to Chicago. So now Chicago's connected into our network. We get credit for it as a large city, and we also have, of course, 2 good profitable lines, Omaha to Rock Island and Rock Island to Chicago. So that was the thinking there. So, and it's similar to what we've done in other scenarios. The one where I thought you had to connect them, this is exactly what I did, because it's a smart way to do it. Don't just run out and connect to Chicago, go through Rock Island and get your beer meat, get your 2 beer meat lines. Now this also, because we put Rock Island on there, it gave us that Fargo to Omaha to Rock Island connection, and I'll have to confess, I'd actually forgotten that one. I just kind of lucked out here. I would have hit it anyway, but I did forget that I had to do that one. That was one of our, it was like one of the 4th task we had to do. So now I'm thinking about what's the easiest way for me to go ahead and build out some more connections and up my traffic and everything else. And just as we've done on this map a couple of times already, it seems to me that the easiest way to do it is just to buy somebody. So I'm looking around to see, who do I want to buy and what do I do? I'm also looking ahead to that Knoxville task, which I think is going to be the big one we have to do. And because we're so far away from it, it's growing a little, but not enough. So now I'm just getting that kind of that paying off financing, getting all set to take out big bonds and buy a competitor. And the task we have to specifically address is to connect 12 cities to our network. We have 9, so I'm thinking, what easier way to do that than to buy competitor and just have those connections. So plus, in Trainiac mode, this just makes perfect sense because those stations are getting so expensive that it's going to cost you a small fortune to build your stations. So why not buy a competitor and have his stations already? So you kind of buy him, but you don't liquidate him. And that way you get his stations and his connections and all that good stuff, but you don't have to pay the exorbitant price for your your railroad stations. And that kind of also has the residual effect of saying that after I've got that set and I have to build more stations, they won't cost me so much because I didn't spend that. I didn't bump the price of the stations up with the ones that I built through the purchase. So it just makes sense to buy a competitor. The competitors in this game, if you're playing well, in my opinion, they're really your assets. They are nuisances sometimes because you have to deal with their lines and sometimes build bridges over the lines and stuff like that. But if you use them correctly, like here if you use them if you use them correctly, they really are assets to you because you can manipulate them into doing what you want done a little bit in terms of purchasing stuff. But more to the point, when you're ready to do something like a major expansion like this and go out to 3 more cities, then buy a competitor. What easier way to do it? And if you have a strong economy, which we do, and if you follow these methods, you will have a strong economy. You can see Sioux Falls is really growing now. We had the museum in there, and now look what we're doing. We're actually taking the museum out. Why is that? Because we've hit our goal of growth for Sioux Falls, and we don't need it to grow more. What we needed to do now is just be a good little profit center for us and just sit there because we've got to grow Knoxville to surpass it in population. Well, if we keep that museum in there and we keep feeding the growth to Sioux Falls, we're just making it harder on ourselves to get that Knoxville goal. And boy, I really am kind of bouncing back and forth between Knoxville and Knoxville. My accent comes and goes. I really have lost it a little bit. Keep in mind, I'm a hillbilly, so I'm from West Virginia, and I have a hillbilly accent. The people down here in North Carolina have a mixture of the transplants who have whatever accent they have, and the actual North Carolina Southern accent, which is really strong. And when I get away from West Virginia, I start losing my accent. And then, over the years of working and traveling and whatever, I really did lose it a little bit. So it comes back sometimes, and sometimes it goes. And so forgive me if I'm inconsistent in what I said. It really is Knoxville. That's the proper way to say it. But I will probably say Knoxville about as often as I say Knoxville. So, all right. sorry. So now I want money. So I'm grabbing that professor. We're trying to accumulate money to buy somebody. Money's more important than research to me at this point. And we just want to accumulate some funds and make a purchase. So that's what we'll do. And we've got, what are we looking at here? Oh, I'm looking to, again, to get the good news about putting the maintenance sheds on is you cut down on those little triangle errors, and when you do see one now, you need to pay attention to it. Remember how we used to, in some of the scenarios, we just ignored the triangles pretty much because we didn't care about breakdowns. Well, here we've got this milk line that came in too low on that line, so to speak, to catch the supply tower. So we need to add a supply tower so that milk line that's going directly into the city there, into Kansas City, will pick up the supplies. There you go, just hit one. So, and here comes the other line that we had coming in. Well, that's the same thing. There's the milk line, another train from that milk line. It as well needs to hit that supplies. And the reason I've had that milk line coming in there anyway is because we have to transport dairy. And I wanted to make sure that we got dairy in some of these cities. So we actually own the dairy in Kansas City, and I want to make sure it's profitable and getting milk so that it'll have getting milk so that it can create the dairy and then ship it out to Des Moines and to down south to Fayetteville. There, I did that one well. Fayetteville, rather than Fayetteville. Okay, I'm working on it. All right, so you can see I don't have much to say. That's why I'm wandering or babbling about the accents because we've covered all this before. So I think I'm going to fast forward again, and I will say this: I am trying to be cruel to the guy I'm trying to buy. I'm robbing him. I'm going to sick a reporter on him, doing things to drive his stock price down. Here comes the reporter. I'm going to have the reporter go out and write some nasty articles about Roger, who, he's a nice guy. Well, I don't know why I'm doing this, but why not? It's there, and it's something to do. So we're just trying to drive Roger's stock price down, and we're going to accumulate enough cash. So, and what I'm trying to do is I've paid off my bonds, and I've tried to accumulate enough cash so that when I have the amount that I have plus the 2 bonds that I can open, I can afford to buy the guy. And you have to realize that they do keep growing, so you have to kind of have a little extra to try to get it right. So we've got $4 million in cash, which is a lot of cash to hold. In any game like this, you don't want to hold cash, you want to spend it so that it'll make more cash. But here we're holding because we want to have enough to be able to buy Roger out. So I'm thinking, we're double checking to see what that price is. Where's that point? See, he's gone up a little bit. He's still growing, but there, now we've got problems in Nashville. That means that the reporter has hit him, so his stock should go down a little bit, and we're at a good critical mass in terms of funds. So now I'm going to open my 2 bonds and go out here and check on, do I have enough funds to buy Roger? And we're real close, so we're just going to sit there got it almost right. It came out a little bit short, but now we'll just let that run until we get that nice little green arrow, and then we'll quickly buy Roger out, and that'll give us our connections, our extra cities, and another task accomplished once we do the merger. And we will keep his lines. There we go, task completed. So now we've got our connections after they tell us how wonderful we are. And now our big one is to get this passenger revenue. And this one can be tough to do the passengers. You'll probably notice that I don't do passenger priority lines. I just go ahead and kind of use the same method, and my approach here is increase the revenue through growth more than just by prioritizing passengers. I don't think the prioritizing passengers helps you. I don't think it's helpful if you run enough lines. Now, enough trains on your lines. Now, if you're one of these people who plays with, you only run one train on a line, then yeah, you better prioritize passengers, or you're going to just run mail on that line. But because we take the approach of running a lot of trains, there's enough volume of trains to pick up all the business. So here's one thing I am going to do is set up a direct line from two large cities, from Des Moines, which, by the way, of course, I should have grown with that museum long ago. But so here's where my sins are coming back to me. But Des Moines should be bigger. But we're going to run a line between Des Moines and Sioux Falls, because it's two large cities. We'll get good traffic between them and a lot of passengers, which is what we need. And here you'll notice we are setting up a passenger mail line. Des Moines to Sioux Falls would be a beer-to-beer line anyway. There would be some goods movement, but not very much. And if we set up a passenger and mail line, we're going to probably make more money, more passenger money, because the faster the connection, the faster you can get a passenger from city A to city B, the more money you can charge, and thus the more money you can make. So it makes sense to have this be a passenger and mail line, especially since we're trying to get passenger income. But notice I didn't set it up passenger priority. There just really isn't any point, because we're going to run enough trains that we're going to be able to pick up all the mail and all the passengers pretty much. And that's probably, we could probably talk about that for a second. That's a concept I think people don't quite get. The passengers have a certain amount of time they'll wait at a station before they just take off by land or some other means to get to where they're trying to go. So you have to have a frequency of trains coming in and out of that station in order to maximize the volume you get. And some people will look at the game and go, oh gosh, you're running a train that only has one boxcar of passengers and one boxcar of mail. How inefficient. No, not at all. That's what you need to be doing. You need to be grabbing those passengers and mail and running them. And that little train running one of each will definitely make you a profit. So that investment of that train was going to be recouped, and you're going to make money on it. But the point is, if you don't have the frequency, you're going to lose out on passengers, and you won't get enough passengers. So you could sit there. I mean, you could run theoretically, you could sit and run a passenger and mail only line and force it to be full. Just say, don't leave the station until you're full. And the truth is, it probably might never leave the station, because the people will get tired of waiting and they'll leave. So you may eventually get to run one train, but you're not going to make any money that way. The way to make money is to have a bunch of trains running so that you pick up as many passengers as possible. And even if you run a lot of passengers, if you look at the city view and you look at that express demand side of the city view, you'll see that you're not getting all the passengers anyway, even if you're running a whole lot of trains. It's very difficult to get all the passengers all the time. You can't do it. But you just want to get as many as you can within reason. And the limiter to me is how fast can you turn those trains through the station so that you can keep them moving and have a high frequency of trains running between your cities. That's how you get the most passenger revenue. And if anybody's got a different viewpoint on that, please let us know in the comments. So we're trying to bump up our passenger revenue. We set up that line between Des Moines and Sioux Falls. And now we're thinking about, okay, what else can we do to really bump up the passenger revenue? And what I decided to do here is, we've got our line from Kansas City to Rock Island to Chicago. Now we're going to make a direct line from Kansas City to Chicago and have a passenger line running between Kansas City and Chicago, because these longer lines make more passenger money as well. So the ticket prices are based on the length of the line and how fast it is, how efficient it is. And now we're running reduced. We're running on a harder mode where it's this gain you get is not as much as a normal gain, but it's still a gain. You still gain money by running longer lines. So the longer passenger lines make more money than the shorter passenger lines, all else being equal. So, and by the way, this is the kind of a line that you wouldn't even think about making early in the game, because look at all this the tunnels and the bridges we're having to build to create this line. It's a very expensive line, but right now, a $700,000 line doesn't bother us. Actually, it's going to be about $1.5 million by the time we double it and put towers on it and stuff. $1.5 million line, that's okay, because we've got an objective to meet, which is the passenger revenue. So we're willing to spend this kind of money to meet our objective. So again, we're setting this up as a passenger and mail only line, because we want to get those higher ticket prices. We want the trains to get there faster over a longer distance. Right now we only have the Baldwin. I remember as I was playing this, I'm thinking I'd like to do some research and get out there and get a fast express train. You'd really love to get to the end of the research and get that NYC American, which is 60-mile-an-hour train. It's almost twice as fast as this. It would do wonders for your mail revenue. So now we're going to put an attraction in Chicago, and that's going to give us a 20% increase in passenger traffic. And we'd love to do something in Kansas City, put an attraction in Kansas City as well, and get 20% both ways. But Kansas City just hadn't grown that much. You notice we kind of ignored our HQ because we went off to Sioux Falls and did our two-city cluster with Omaha. Now we are going back. We're taking out the museum in Omaha and replacing it with an attraction, so we can get that 20% bump. Double checking Sioux Falls, it already has an attraction. Fargo won't be big enough. We haven't bothered to grow it. We could grow it very easily. Had we chosen to, we could have just bumped a couple more things into Fargo and put an attraction up there as well, but decided to put our attention elsewhere because we've got all this stuff going on down here. So we can put an attraction in Memphis, and that way our Fayetteville to Memphis volume will be good. Eventually we can have Memphis to Nashville would be good, but basically definitely here. Fayetteville hadn't grown enough, so and it's too low. It would take too much work to try to grow it, so we can turn our attention elsewhere. Now we're kind of looking at the mess we've inherited from Roger. He was down here in Knoxville, Nashville, and Memphis growing those, and he's done an okay job. I mean, they've grown a little bit, but of course, the computer AI runs on normal train mode, and we run realistic. So we have to double take all his tracks and double track them, set in signals and all that stuff. But the good news is, for example, here there's already that tunnel going from Knoxville to Nashville, and being able to double track it, making that double track is not going to cost us that much because the tunnel's already built. The heavy lifting's been done. All we have to do is put the second line on it, which won't cost us too much. We'll have a nice direct line through those mountains, which is one of the reasons you don't destroy his infrastructure, because if you did, then you'd have to turn around and build tunnels again, or have some big long circuitous route to go around, which might not even get you any passenger traffic because it might be too long. So right now I'm going to go through and just kind of clean up the mess and, in other words, double track and what have you, because I'm looking way ahead. I'm thinking about passenger traffic that we have to get eventually or right away, and I'm also looking down the road to growing Knoxville. And sorry, I can't get over the Knoxville thing here now, but it's stuck in my head. So let's fast forward a little bit more, and I'll show you kind of what we ended up doing with growing Knoxville. So you noticed I ran some direct lines to bring logs and fruit into Knoxville from up there to the north. And the thing I'm doing here, like for example with Nashville, is looking at the businesses and the things that it's going to send us and making sure that they get supplies so that we get those goods. Because you need the raw materials and you need the manufactured goods to have your city grow. Now here I decide to put in a warehouse. And it may seem like a strange place for a warehouse. It's certainly not a pass-through warehouse. But we're going to do something a little bit different here. We're going to set up a warehouse specifically for feeding Knoxville. And put it there because we've got that big old mountain we've got to get through. And well, let me put it this way: that there's a large mountain there to our west, right here, that is blocking us from several resources over here to the west that we would like to have. So I decided to solve this problem by running one line like a main line out here through that mountain, building, going ahead and biting the bullet and paying for the tunnels. Remember, we got plenty of money now. And running it out, and I'm going to stub it out up here so it can be used to bring in sugar and wheat and corn and milk from over here to the west through the mountains into Knoxville. And if you observe it, you know, well, you don't really have to have a warehouse. You could just run those lines directly into the city. Yes, you could. But the reason I chose to do a warehouse was because I wanted to have a steady, even flow of goods. And you'll see what I do about that in a moment. But if you can imagine, if I ran direct lines from that sugar, the corn and wheat you see up there, the milk you see down there, if I ran those direct lines into the cities, depending upon how those trains happen to line up, and I don't want to try to over-control them. As I've stated, I'm not into micromanagement, so I don't want to try to over-control those trains. So I'm going to let them run on their schedule when they run. But I do want a steady flow of all the goods. And here, by the way, I'm making an adjustment. Since I ran the tunnel through those top two platforms, basically platforms 4 and 3, then I needed to move my line over to the city, over to platforms 1 and 2, because I don't want them all competing with each other. I want dedicated lines running to the city and dedicated lines running out to the resources out there to the west. So I'm just making an adjustment here and bumping the city line over to platforms 1 and 2 on the warehouse, so that we can dedicate those to running our city line. And double tracking on the end so we can use both platforms on both ends. And I don't recall if I did as good a job as I should have setting these up so that they would optimize the platform use. I think I did, but I right this moment I couldn't swear. I'll be interested to see. I'll be watching with you to see what happens there. So now we've got this stub line running out, and what we can do now is set up lines from each of these sources, like our milk here. And I was actually checking to see if it's got enough room to actually use it, or if I need another station. I do have enough room. And one little piece of advice I would give you when you set these up like this: notice how it runs down parallel to the track for a while. Obviously, I could have set my switch and merge way up closer to that station, but I want to give enough room so that there's room for an off-ramp, so to speak, so that the milk can come on, get on that line, go to the warehouse, but when it comes back, I want to make sure that that milk train gets out of the way so that the trains that are going past it, like the corn and wheat and sugar, can also work without being held up. And I actually decided, lo and behold, I don't have a long enough line. It's making me, the curve is too tight, and I decided to bite the bullet here and set up another station that's more in line with the track, and then I can run a nice parallel line straight down and not have to worry about that curve. And a little waste of money there that I did an expansion I didn't need to have, but again, we got money now. So now we run a nice long line down there with enough room for the trains returning to get off, and now we can have a nice clean merger and be able to run our milk trains without problem and without holding up any of the other trains. So we'll do this merger for the milk. We'll run milk into the warehouse, and we'll do the same with wheat and corn. Actually, not wheat, corn and sugar, and run that into the warehouse. And I'm going to fast forward while we get that set up. All right, so we've just about got our warehouse set up now. Got the lines running in, feeding sugar and corn and milk into the warehouse. And now we're just about ready to set up our lines into the warehouse, into Knoxville from the warehouse. But I'm also, another thing you have to manage, of course, with the city growth are the industries in the city. And this preserves business is no good. It should not be there. So I actually bought it, and now I'm replacing it with a distillery because I know I'm going to be bringing, I've got fruit coming in from up there in the north. I'm going to have sugar coming in from my warehouse, so a distillery will work. And that gives me another business that will help supply Knoxville with what it needs, and it's not redundant to what's being fed into Knoxville from Nashville and any place else that goods are coming in. So now we're going to go track one, and we're going to prioritize corn, run full. So the idea is you're going to go to you're going to start at the warehouse, you're going to get a full load, take it to Knoxville. Your priority is going to be corn. Now, our next train is going to run from track 2. Its priority is going to be sugar, but it's going to fill up on whatever it can get, and it's going to run into the city. And here it's going to run into the right-hand track in the city. So the first one went into the left-hand track in the city. The second one's going to go into the right-hand track. And now we're going to set up a third from the left-hand side that's going to get milk, run full, and go into the city. Into the left-hand, well, excuse me, the left-hand track on the, I'm just double checking the tracks there, left-hand out of the warehouse. And then we've got, I set up a fourth one to prioritize vegetables because it shows vegetables as a possibility in the warehouse, but I don't think there's actually vegetables over there anywhere. So no matter, it won't find vegetables. It'll just fill up on whatever else it has. Now these are good trains to have security guards on because you actually get paid when at the end of their run. These trains coming in, I actually goof up and put, I think, security guards on some of these, and that's actually a mistake because they don't get paid. They go into the warehouse and nothing happens. So you want to put your security guards on those trains that are running from the warehouse to the city because that's where the money is. And here I'm finishing off my sugar connection going into the city. And now we have logs and fruit coming in from the north. We're going to have corn, sugar, and milk coming in from our warehouse from the south. We already had that wheat line running from nearby that's feeding wheat into Knoxville. So we've got 3, 4, 5. We've got 6 goods coming into Knoxville, which is great. That'll help it grow. And we've got, oh, and I'm actually trying to this gets a little, this is almost micromanagement, but you need throughput on your warehouse. I'm trying to get the tracks coming in from those various raw materials to be spread out over the 2 platforms in the warehouse so that we don't get traffic jams and a big pile-ups. And I think I do a mediocre job of that. I could have done better, but I really do lose patience sometimes. It's a shame on me. But at any rate, Knoxville is continuing to grow, and we own both of the industries, so we can control them. We make sure that they get plenty of stuff. Our distillery is still missing sugar. It just hasn't gotten there yet, but when it does, we'll load up sugar and start carrying that into the city, and then we'll be good to go, and we'll have good resources coming in. And then the next thing we'll do is make sure that, again, that anything coming in from another city is being supplied so that it has good supplies of the manufactured goods coming into Knoxville. So we're looking pretty good. Actually, this is really about all we needed to do. We're in good shape to grow Knoxville the way we want to at this point. So let's speed up again until something interesting happens. We have fast forwarded quite a little bit here. We really, during that interim, we bought another competitor, the one over there near us, the Rochester one, and got that Rochester to Duluth line going. And we did a little more cleanup on our purchase of Roger and set up the line for, what am I trying to say? For St. Louis to Memphis. And here we've got a little problem because when we did that, stubbed out that line, our big fancy line to do all the supplies into Knoxville, we forgot supply towers. I forgot supply towers. So that's where all those triangles are there, the warnings. But that'll get cleaned up as soon as they pass through the new supply towers we just gave them. So we're looking really good. The only thing we have left now really are two tasks: that quarterly revenue profit from passengers, that's a tough one, and growing Knoxville to be the largest city, which is, we're good on that. In fact, here we go putting in a museum, so it's hit our 60 mark, and we're in good shape on Knoxville, and it will grow. And as you know, we kind of stunted the growth in these other places by putting attractions rather than museums in the bigger cities. And we're putting attractions now whenever we have a chance, like here at Rock Island, it's at 60,000. And that's because we're trying to get that passenger revenue up as high as we can. So we want as many passengers as we can get on all of our routes. So attractions are the way to go there. So now we're starting what's probably the key to kind of finishing off that passenger goal. We're going to run a big, long, rather expensive line from Knoxville all the way to Chicago and make it a passenger line. And that one should create a lot of revenue for us. And we have to hop over. It's a little pricey to try to buy out the general. He's got a pretty good little thing going here. He's got a lot of cities and has done a pretty good job. So we're just going to jump over him and build an expensive line, no big deal, and run a line from Chicago to Knoxville. So that's our, a large city, Chicago, over a long route to another large city with an attraction in Chicago. So that should be a pretty good deal for us. And it's expensive. This is one of those things you wouldn't do early, but you can do them now because you've got the revenue. So we're going to build this line and try to make it at least reasonably priced by kind of knocking down the big bridges, tunneling only when we have to, but still keeping the slope reasonable so we don't get our trains slowed down by any big inclines. So we will set that line up and run it between these two, and that, like I said, that'll kind of knock off that requirement to get that quarterly revenue profit, because this will be a good one. In fact, as I recall, we run it, it only takes 2 quarters from here to finish off our goal, because I think mostly because this particular line really generates a lot of good profit for us. And again, your prices that you can charge on those passenger lines are a combination of how fast can you get folks there and how long a distance is it. And even though we're running this reduced option where that rate doesn't go up as fast, it still is a significant amount of money. And in fact, I think the whole reason that reduced option is there is because people who first started playing the game when it came out were really you could just run 2 or 3 long lines between 2 cities and just make so much money that you didn't have to do anything else for your economy. So they put this reduced in there to make it a little bit harder. So here we go. We're going to get that line set up. It's going to run. It's going to give us our goals, and then we've already done pretty much everything we need to do for growing Knoxville. This line right here, plus all the other expansion we've done, the Duluth to Rochester line and Des Moines to Rochester and all that stuff that we got from purchasing that second opponent, and then cleaning up down here and getting lines going to Memphis, St. Louis, etc. We're going to get enough passenger traffic to close out that task. So I'm going to stop right here and going to fast forward to the end because we're getting up on about an hour here. So I'm going to fast forward to the end so we can see how we did. Okay, we're coming up on the end now, so we're just about to have Knoxville fully grown. We've just kept growing, kept building our lines, making sure that all the goods are being delivered to Knoxville that we need. We've already, that line between Knoxville and Chicago turned the tide on our passenger revenue. So let's see how we did. So we got all our tasks, we got our president rating, and we only got an 18.6 out of timing. I believe that's, first of all, the company value was a little slow, and the passenger mail profit was a little slow. I should have really built toward that and had made some longer lines with passenger traffic earlier than I did. So that was a mistake on my part. The difficulty rating is the thing that's still driving us crazy because it's a 0.8, and as Machik pointed out, the 0.8 is because the standard of 1 is 600,000. So if you have a little more money, then you're going to get a little ding and have a 0.8 rather than a 1. And the assumption would be if you have even more money, your rating would be even less. However, this is where we get confused because Jerome Weston has played a couple of games where he's taken more money and his difficulty ratings are actually higher. So that difficulty is a rename of what they used to call starting capital or starting money or starting funds or something like that. And I really personally think they have an opportunity here to change that difficulty or add another category, which is, are you playing on normal, pro, or Trainiac? It seems to me like your rating should be driven off of that a little bit. But I guess at the end of the day, one more time, it doesn't matter. Play it and try to get a perfect score. I failed to get a perfect score this time. But pretty good, pretty solid build. So I'm pretty happy with the way it turned out. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you didn't mind getting all the fast forwards. I would like to hear some comments. Would you rather I just showed the whole 3 hours, or is it okay if I cut them up like this a little bit so that they don't just go on and on? You let me know in the comments, please. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope it'll help you become a better player, and I hope you'll join us for our next Railway Empire video. Thank you.